Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite things to talk about with students, which is Chaturanga or low plank. I tend to call it low plank because I don't really use Sanskrit, but you say Chaturanga, everybody knows what you mean. If I can get this one off my mat, then we're going to talk about it. You will need a strap for this. There are many ways to talk about finding alignment and modifications in Chaturanga, but I'm just going to talk about my favorite way for the sake of timeliness. I could spend an hour talking about it, but we're going to try and keep it short and sweet. So I do need you to have a yoga strap. If you don't have one, then maybe just watch or revisit this again when you do have one, but it is necessary for this particular drill. Hey, can I have this mat, please? Thank you. Thank you. Now, one of the most common injuries from yoga are shoulder injuries. And the way people are injuring their shoulders is by doing Chaturanga too often and incorrectly. Now, one of the big misconceptions about Chaturanga is that it's a dive, a swan dive. That's how I learned it. That's how I did it for 10 years. I also had really sore shoulders a lot of the time. It was also aggravating a previous shoulder injury. Two big mistakes you're going to find in Chaturanga that lead to the shoulder injuries. One is having the elbows splay out, where they need to be sort of wrapped in when you're in plank, so when you bend, your elbows come back. The other one is bringing your chest down too low, which you find when you do this sort of swan dive down, when your chest is coming down below your shoulders, then it's awkward and a lot on your shoulders to sort of press back up from there. And the reason people sort of swan dive into it is because it's often used as a transitional movement between plank and up dog. And it is more than, it's not a transitional movement, it's a transitional pose. It's its own pose. You need to find it, you need to stick it, and then you need to move on. And when you're in low plank Chaturanga, it looks like plank but lower, which is why we call it low plank. Your arms are more or less 90 degrees. That's what you're going for anyway. And your body is parallel to the ground. It's a hard pose to find. Now, when you're in plank, and I think this is where the swan dive sort of comes in when people are using that cue, you can't just start to bend your elbows from plank, or your elbows are going to be way too far back. You're not going to find that 90 degrees. So you have to press forward on your toes. And I think that's where that swan dive cue sort of comes into play. Then you bend your elbows, and then you're halfway down. But when you swan dive, you miss the pose. Your chest comes down way too low, and you're just sort of pressing into up dog, and you're missing the pose altogether. So what we're going to do to practice this is find your strap. And if you've been in my vinyasa classes, you know that if I see a room full of sloppy Chaturangas, we're going to stop and do this for 10 minutes and give everybody just sort of that physical cue and that reminder of what this feels like. We're going to loop the strap and you want your loop to be about the width of your shoulders, so that when you put your arms in, it's coming right above the elbows, and when you bend your arms are hugged in tight to the sides of your body. And with the strap on this way, you're going to find plank. And the first thing you want to do when you're coming into Chaturanga is look forward, not down. So you're looking forward. You press forward on your toes. You're really pressing forward onto the tips of your toes Then you start bending your elbows, and the strap gives you this physical cue, like that's as far down as you come. That's it. And if you're used to swan diving, you're going to swear that you're too high, that your chest isn't low enough. But if you record yourself, then you'll see that no, before your chest was too low. And this is as low as you go. Now, something that happens with that swan dive is that you're able to sort of drag your toes forward. You can't really do that here. So when you come to your chaturanga this way, you either need to, 1 foot at a time, find your up dog, or you have to press your feet back, and then you can slide your toes under to your up dog. Sometimes I'll have people practice a whole vinyasa this way. You can have sort of a head cradle here, roll to plank, find your low plank, your up dog, downward facing dog. And if you want to practice your jump backs, it's the same thing, because when you're jumping back, you want to land in low plank chaturanga, not plank. When you jump back and land in plank, your tendency is to lock those elbows really hard, which isn't good for your joints. And then your hips tend to sort of slam down towards the ground, which is very jarring on the low back. So if you're doing a flow, if you're doing sun salutations, and instead of stepping back, you want to jump back, you really need to be landing in chaturanga. And the strap is a really great way to help you find that. So you're going to jump back, you're going to keep this bend in the elbows, and you're going to land right there. So just some things to practice. So keep this in mind. I will tell you that you don't have to do chaturanga ever. If you don't feel like you're strong enough that day, or if you're halfway through class and you feel yourself getting sloppy, you feel yourself just diving down and sort of pressing up and losing that form and losing that stop. I tell my classes when we're flowing, when we get to chaturanga, I say stop there, say hello, find up dog. Give it that second. It's its own pose. So if you find that you're too tired, you can't do that, then just no more chaturangas for that day. Your body's had enough. I do this all the time. You don't have to do chaturanga. You can either come down, all the way down and do cobra, or you can just find your up dog, or often I will just lift it back up to downward facing dog. Remembering that is always your practice. So I hope this little drill helps you with chaturanga. It is sort of my pet pose. When I see people doing it not safely, I want to save their shoulders. So comment with any questions. Let me know if it helps, and I will see you guys later.